Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Garrison, and in the spirit of the trees and in the spirit of all living nature, I want to welcome you today to this session of Humanity Rising, which is the third session in a 5-day program that we're convening with Dr. Stephanie Mines and the Tara Institute on regenerative health in a climate-changing world, in a world that is just now recovering from 2 years of COVID that saw most of us in lockdown and social distancing and wearing masks. And so we're convening this program at a time when public health has emerged as a seminal issue for the entire human community, because COVID and climate change have been global and increasingly present in virtually everyone's daily lives, no matter where you are, anywhere in the world, and no matter what you're doing. We've all been impacted. And the health indicators worldwide, without exception, have been going down, not up. So how we regenerate our human capacities, our health, and do so not just physically, but emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, because all those aspects have to come together to produce a strong immune system. It's not just one aspect of who we are, it's every aspect of who we are. And that's why we so appreciate what Stephanie Mines has been doing. She's a neuroscientist. She's written 5 books on this subject. She has a specialty in trauma. My God, the world has been traumatized. And then when you add Ukraine and you add the Supreme Court decision on women's right to reproductive health in the United States, you have a world that is increasingly traumatized, increasingly debilitated because of that. And in the middle, we all have to take responsibility for who we are and how we regenerate the health that we need to thrive and to feel whole and to feel abundant. So Stephanie, I really want to thank you for everything that you're doing this week on Humanity Rising. I appreciate the quality of presenters that you brought in. It's really been both challenging and inspiring. And I turn the program over to you.
Thank you so much, my friend, Jim Garrison, for creating a platform that allows us to deliver regenerative health in a climate-changing world. Day one, we experienced the power of invocation, the way that all healing must begin, honoring the sacred, honoring the generations before us, the guardians that support us in our healing process. And that is personal and collective simultaneously. Day two, redefining the meaning of health and healthcare from a groundswell level, from a grassroots level, claiming our responsibility to the health consequences of climate crisis. And I include in that the COVID pandemic, and I include in that the Roe v. Wade potential loss of a woman's right over her own body, the epitome of patriarchal colonialism over our bodies as an amplification of that extraction intellect that dares to take control over what is uncontrollable. So today, we will have a lived experience of the regenerative paradigm that I've developed. I would like to begin with a somatic invocation. And Jim referenced the immune system. We want to be partnered deeply and somatically with immune function. Immune function is our birthright of protection. And in fact, the entire regenerative paradigm is about protection. If anything, I would say I developed it out of my responsibility to children, to youth, to the children of the future. So let's begin with a somatic attunement. I'm going to adjust my screen so you can see the placement of my hands. We are the 5-fingered ones, as Lev Natan said yesterday. I'm placing the palm of my right hand right under the ribs on the left side of my body. We're going to do this on both sides, so you can start on either side. So right here at the base of the sternum, over to one side, you'll feel the ribs and the ledge of the ribs, and right under there on the connective tissue. We are in dialogue with connective tissue, the mother matrix of the body and the conductor of all sensory experience. So placing the palm of one hand on the opposite connective tissue area under the rib, and then the fingertips of the opposite hand slide into the little valley at the end of the elbow. So resting now in this gentle posture, softening your joints, letting the soles of your feet, the connective tissue there, meet the connective tissue of the earth, allowing your shoulders to come down away from your ears, letting your face soften, letting your chest widen, and welcoming in the breath of life as you feel the heat and the self-love and self-respect that interacts with this protective application. We are actually stimulating the heart protector, the pericardium, to monitor our cardiovascular function, one of the functions greatest at risk in a climate changing world, and telling our immune system we are partnered with it. Feeling the sensory responses, a moment of silence here. Noticing very naturally your breath will deepen even more than you thought possible. And perhaps at that juncture, you can feel free to shift to the other side. And perhaps you're noticing, as I am, that you already feel different. When I was speaking to Roe v. Wade, I could feel the fury rising in me. I don't want to lose that fury, but through this heart protector, I can find that settling. One of my purposes is to honor the activists. We must take care of ourselves. And we do that through sensory filtering, building the sensory filters that may not have been nurtured sufficiently in our development. We develop them further. We create excellent sensory filters that partners with the immune system to make good protective decisions. Breathing in, feeling the power of our own self-respect, breathing out, letting us release. And I invite you in your own time to seal the energetic transformation that has just occurred in what is called palm or prayer inju. Heightening alignment. Alignment is the regal protective mechanism that we can embody and re-embody through this inju. Thank you. Please know that these practices are yours to continue, and my honor to share them with you. They come from my studies, my research, and particularly my apprenticeship with Mary Eno Burmeister, who transmitted these practices, such as the inju, to me in a long, more than 20-year discipleship that I had with her, and she is now my ancestor. What we're going to do today is experience the regenerative health paradigm that I developed. And I want you to know that you can become a regenerative health practitioner. That's my intention, to impart the principles of this paradigm to you. My vision is protective, like the immune system. My vision is to empower adults as the stewards of this earth and the children of the future, and impart the principles of cultural sensitivity, empowerment, providing the tools that are easily taught and easily replicated, like the practices that I introduced today. That translates to all demographics. This is universal in value. That has been tested. My interventions have been clinically tested, and the other interventions in the cultural library of regenerative health resources that I'm building have been either clinically or time tested, so that there is some way that we have discovered that they are easy to replicate, easily transmissible. And there is extensive clinical research, which I will share in a course that I'm creating, a simple introduction to regenerative health. There is extensive research that demonstrates how applications such as this are successful in making substantive differences in health outcomes. Every intervention must have a self-care component. So the regenerative paradigm means that once you learn it, like the intervention we did today, it's yours. Evokes the natural healing response. The capacity to be developing increased filtering in your sensory systems is always there. The capacity to organize your immune response, reorganize your immune response is always there. That's the essence of resilience. These interventions are not traumatizing or re-traumatizing. They are repeatable by anyone, can be shared without concern, and always consistently provide some degree of relief from chronic and acute conditions. So these are the principles of regenerative health. You will see them demonstrated in what we're going to do today. So I want to invite members of the TARA community. So TARA, Tools for Awakening Resources and Awareness, is the paradigm that I created for the resolution of shock and trauma. It's a training program. You're invited to join it. And the people who will be forming the regenerative circle of healing today, that it is my intention to transmit to anyone who would like to create such a circle in their community, are members, practitioners of the Tara approach for the resolution of shock and trauma. I'd like to first introduce Michelle Wilcox. Michelle is an advanced Tara practitioner, a teacher of the Tara approach. And Michelle, I want to express right now my gratitude to you for organizing everything that is the backstory to today's experience. So what you're going to experience today has preparatory elements. Obviously, within the time frame that we have, we cannot demonstrate the entire sequence that leads to the healing circle you'll experience today. Michelle has been facilitating that background. With the other members of the healing circle, I'd like to introduce Susan Roberts, who is joining us from Wales. Susan will be in the center of the healing circle. So when you're ready, Susan, you can come into the circle by opening your video and making yourself available for everyone to see your beautiful self. I'd like to introduce Jen Warner. She is a practitioner in training in the Tara Approach certification training. I'd like to introduce Nalini Yadav, who is a Tara Approach practitioner. And I'd like to introduce Laurel Nelson. Laurel is the newbie. She is new to the Tara Approach and has joined the Tara Approach practitioner training. So this is our healing circle. This is the circle that will give you an emergent experience of the regenerative health paradigm. And very wonderfully, the speakers from yesterday in particular already pointed to, in the redefining of health, the components of the regenerative health paradigm. That was just delightful for me because I didn't prep them on what the components of regenerative health are, and yet they articulated those components. And as we proceed, I would like everyone who is listening, who is watching, to consider how it would be for them to be in the center of the circle, to have this focus on the individual. So in the Western paradigm, such a possibility is completely not available. There's no time. There are forms to be filled out. There are deadlines to meet. There are other patients waiting to see in 3 minutes, 5 minutes. I want to once again mention a book that I think is an essential book for those who care about the future of health. And that is Thomas Fisher, The Emergency. A great deal of the book consists of his letters written to the patients he has seen. I feel the emotion behind it right now as I articulate this. The patients he has seen who he could not serve in the way that his heart and his intelligence and his true training led him. So rather than stuff that every hour, every minute back into his body, this brilliant man, Thomas Fisher, let it out in letters to these patients, the words that he has longed to share with them. So I dare to present a paradigm that says, if there isn't time for this, what are we doing? And what is the importance of having a healthcare system that doesn't provide compassionate care? What is the value of individual healing in a climate crisis? Margaret Mead, in answer to a question of what is the meaning of civilization, spoke to the moment in history when someone healed from a broken femur. That was only possible as a result of compassionate care. Someone had to stay with that person and tend to that injury. Prior to that moment, such a person was abandoned, left to die, left alone to suffer because there wasn't time, there wasn't energy to tend compassionately to that individual. If we do not put the individual in the center, we are, and I'm afraid we are, uncivilized. So the regenerative paradigm is to bring back compassionate care, as Stella Osorohos Eisenstein said yesterday, to reskill medical practice, healthcare practice. And what is the relationship of that to climate crisis, to this catastrophe with Roe v. Wade? The relationship to me is crystal clear. Without empowerment, we cannot speak our truth. When we know that our words, our being, our expression, our lives, and the lives of our children are of essential value, then we meet these threats in the way that our immune system wants to meet them, without confusion. Many immune systems have become confused. What is a threat? It has lost its clarity. But the immune system, if we are in relationship with it, will, just as we can, remember. So we're going to bring Susan into the center of the healing circle. And Susan, I'd like to invite you to share with your healing circle what your healing quest is. I want to just preface that very briefly by saying that all the members of the circle have been educated in a culture that we teach in the regenerative paradigm. And this is a culture that gives us the practice and the lived experience of cultural sensitivity, deep listening, and following. And the members of the circle have been reflecting for several days now on the issues that Susan will describe, and reflecting on their resources and how they can bring their compassion in her service. So, Susan, tell us about yourself, where you are, and your quest.
Okay, so I'm actually living in Wales, very near the sea. And when I heard about this from Stephanie, my first impulse was I wanted to be of service. And so I guess now I realize by being in the middle of this circle, I am being of service to myself and to everybody. Because it's a healing to me is a circular event. It just doesn't stop. It goes round. And so when you're giving, you're also receiving. And when you're receiving, you're also giving. In summary of my present needs, for some time, I've had a weakness of my bladder. And I generally have difficulties receiving. I think this is due to old patterns. I was sexually abused as a child. And this still plays out in some way that I feel that if I'm receiving something, it might not be good for me. Now, I realize all this with my mind, but somewhere in my body, there is a mismatch, if you like, because I haven't upgraded that. So I can understand it now, but somewhere my body is lagging behind. There's a memory there that is still stuck. I have issues of self-worth, which I'm sure have, their part in that. And my habitual has been always to put myself first. Now I'm changing that, so that's historical, but it's still something that I do if I'm not on my own case. 5 months ago, I lost 2 men who are really important in my life. And so there's been that I've been dealing with. And as I speak of this, I can feel that grief rising. But just recently, I was pottering outside, and I had this breakthrough, really, where I thought to myself, okay, so they both died, and it wasn't what I wanted. It wasn't what I thought should happen, or all the rest of it wasn't what I was expecting. And then I thought, well, hang on a minute. Maybe there's a plan outside of my plan. And once I got that, I sort of settled down. I thought, oh, yeah, of course there is. They're in their plan, I'm in my plan. And the plan, I think, may not be the one that's going to be operating. And anyway, that did soothe me, because I suddenly felt that the responsibility wasn't all mine to save them or to have done anything or whatever else, really. I often think that I'm the only one. And so I think that, it's down to me, that if I don't do it, nobody will. I'm just looking to see if there's anything else. So financial abundance has always been something that I've struggled with. I can trace that back to working in my dad's shop, hating working there, and thinking that if I did something for money, then it would be something that I didn't like doing. Again, I can register it with my head, but still there's something somewhere that is blocking that abundance. My resources, where my go-to if I'm needing help would be first to nature. I'd go for a walk, I'd spend time with trees, I'd swim in the sea, spend time with a plant, gardening. I use Tara as whatever calls me, really. And I include in my self-care, swimming, sleeping out on the land and walking. One of my issues has been wanting to be not seen. And there's 2 sides to this. So there's always a front and a back, it seems. So there's part of me that doesn't want to be seen, and there's another part of me that does want to be seen. So there's that conflict there. I'm happiest out in nature. I never mind being seen by trees and birds and animals. I just know there's no judgment there. I'm happy with children, my grandchildren, and in close friendships, I feel safe. I think that's a summary, really. There's plenty more, but that, yeah. I mean, I consider myself blessed with good health. I just always consider that I'm very, very fortunate. So it's not, and it's something which I feel as an important thing. So yeah, thank you. Thank you for, the privilege of being here in the middle of this circle.
Thank you, Susan. So let's all just, and when I say all, I'm referring to the audience, I'm referring to the listeners. I'm going to ask people to really focus on Susan and this process. Perhaps don't chit chat in the chat, don't promote other programs, don't shift and let yourself be distracted from the centerpiece of this healing process. Let's dare to be focused on compassionate care. And your screen is doing some freezing and some breaking up, but we're able to hear you, Susan, and we're able to see you. But just to be aware that Can you hear me now, Susan?
Yes, I can. I did try to
Excellent.
shift to a much better signal, but when I got there, the internet was off, so they had to come back home. So I know it's not great, but I'm going to do my best here.
Yeah, it's working. We heard every word quite clearly. So I'm happy to hear that you're in a good space in that regard to go with the flow. So let's, as a circle of healing, and this circle is quite wide, and the people who you see on your screen are the embodiment of that wider circle. So we want to take in what Susan has courageously shared. Can you imagine the courage to be in a summit and so intimately reveal your needs and your vulnerability? Oh, I want to honor that courage, Susan. So we've been reflecting on this as a community. Laurel and Nalini and Jan and Michelle and I, we've heard this summary from Susan and have been reflecting on it for several days and deepening as a collective into her story, into her needs, and listening still with fresh ears to a tale of sexual abuse, not an unfamiliar tale in our lives, sadly, something that compassionate care would treat tenderly and intelligently and carefully. And a fragmentation, a mind-body split. And as Susan said, she could accept being in the center of the circle when she knew this would be of service to others and those listening, and even those in the circle, me included. Sexual abuse, fragmentation, are these not our stories? So in our reflections, we came upon using a template that I created that is part of the TAR approach called the Rediscovery Journey. And the Rediscovery Journey sees the individual from the standpoint of their entire life story. So when we talk about having time to really focus on the individual, what we learn in the TAR approach and what we learn in the regenerative paradigm is that we see the person from the standpoint of their life's journey from the moment of their conception. We see them in terms of the demographics of that moment, the emotional, psychological, and spiritual environment that was part of their conception, that influenced them. We see them from the standpoint of their intergenerational inheritance. And we see them from the standpoint of empowerment, that there is a clinically proven capacity in each one of us. This is the science of epigenetics. Epigenetics having more influence on development even than genetics. That we can remember the influences that shaped us. And again, turning to scientifically proven evidence that we can, through a revisioning or restoring, you might say, of those shaping events, create new neuronal connections, unwire what has been fired together, and reinforce that for empowerment, for agency, And I do dare to believe that if we are all willing to do that, that we will find our voices. We will dare to be seen as voices for our living earth. And Susan can own the power of her cronehood as a powerful voice for our living earth. So, Susan, how does it feel to you? You know the rediscovery journey. The audience will be learning it through this experience. How do you feel about meeting your quest through a rediscovery journey?
I'm very happy with that, because it wouldn't be the first time, but every time is a new time. And I just really appreciate this opportunity. So yeah, I'm very happy with that. Thank you.
And is there anything you need leading into such a sacred exploration? Is there anything that would allow you to feel more grounded or safer? Let us know.
Okay. At the moment, I don't think there is. My biggest concern today was I would be late or the internet wouldn't work. They were my overriding concerns. And as I'm not late and the internet is working, that is my, So thank you for asking.
Wonderful, wonderful. So everyone in this circle has been schooled to varying degrees in the rediscovery journey. So what we're going to do in honor of Susan's incredible courage in being so vulnerable and so open is I will facilitate the rediscovery journey. And then after hearing Susan's responses, every member of the circle who is soaking up compassionately while staying in themselves. So the education people have is to be aligned, is to be centered. We've all done our practices, such as the one I introduced this program with, so that we can be as aligned and available as possible for Susan. And each member of the circle will do a giveaway, an offering to their sister, meeting her needs as they attune to her and to what those needs are. So we'll begin the rediscovery with an awareness of breath. And we'll all do this together. So the awareness of breath is not in any way intended to manipulate it. There's not instructions on how to breathe. There's awareness. And everyone, I believe, without exception, even me, I'm someone who has respiratory issues. But as soon as I say those words, bring awareness to your breath, my breath deepens. That happens naturally. So we let that happen, the deepening of the breath. And in that deepening, allowing our limbs to be at ease, allowing ourselves to be more present in a sensory way. We want to release that fragmentation that so many of us experience through sensory awareness. Sensory awareness is the language of original brilliance. So claiming your sensory intelligence by just being aware of your sensations, ending that fragmentation by allowing the thoughts to go on vacation and allowing sensory experience to deepen. And right there, there's more embodiment. And feeling that deeper embodiment, Susan. Enjoying it. the spaciousness it provides, no matter what the circumstances. It's quite delicious. I'm going to invite you on a metaphorical journey. It's called the Rediscovery Journey. Obviously, we're staying where we are, but we're going on a metaphorical journey backwards in time. It's quite fun, actually. And because it's a metaphorical journey, it requires a metaphorical vehicle. So just as I say that, you need a vehicle to go on this journey. What vehicle shows up in your brilliant imagination?
It's an old-fashioned steam train.
An old-fashioned steam train. Can you describe it just a bit more, a little bit about the shape? I imagine that it's, pardon?
It's got a big funnel and the steam coming out. And I can sort of see how the wheels will move. And that's partly from memory. And I'm not so aware of how many carriages. It might just be the steam engine itself, really. And there's just me there. And I'm very happy because I've always wanted to drive a steam engine.
So you're in the driver's seat of the steam engine.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah. So I'm imagining a fairly big gray steel steam engine. Is that accurate?
It's not that big. It's more like one of the ones that would be on the we've got little ones in Wales that are mainly tourist ones, but they would have been there originally. So it's more that size than one of these great big ones that you'd find in a big station.
That's important. Thank you. So that we can all see your vehicle and see you in the driver's seat. I'm delighted that you're in the driver's seat. So now that you are situated in this not so large steam engine in the driver's seat with the big funnel and the steam coming out of the funnel, the steam engine is going to take off and it's going to travel rapidly through present time, because we're not going to be exploring present time. The destination is early, implicit, biographical time. Your life's journey is the one the steam engine is traveling through rapidly to your sensory memories. And those memories are in your body. So you're going to allow your body to be the spokesperson of the memories, the describer, the storyteller. And we are traveling rapidly in the steam engine that already knows the destination. So you're the conductor, but the steam engine is already magnetized to a point in your life that meets the quest you're on, the origin that meets your questions. So this could be when you were crawling on the floor of your home at that time, when you were exploring the surfaces around you from a sensory perspective, the colors and the shapes and the people from a sensory perspective. So your body's sensory responses are the source of the remembering. Or perhaps the steam engine knows to go earlier than that, perhaps to before you were so capable motorically, when you were more passive, reclining, supine, held, perhaps in nature, perhaps on the grass, perhaps in a bed or a crib, or perhaps in someone's arms, feeling the flesh of another. Or even earlier than that, Susan, potentially the steam engine knows that your quest can be met from the moment you were born, perhaps, or the moments immediately after being born, or the moments immediately before being born, when you were exploring the emergence into the world that you'd been preparing for, or any time prior to that, when you were mobile in the watery environment of your mother's womb. And we know from your reporting that you were a twin, so you were accompanied through all of this, and you were moving in concert with your twin, who was not identified. One of you was not identified. You came first. We know that from your reporting. So perhaps you were the one who was identified. That's an unknown factor. But it's important to note that in this early experience, you were not alone. Even earlier, when you were so small that you and your twin were as if moved by the waters of your mother's body. Or perhaps the steam engine is taking you even earlier. Perhaps when you were first discovered, if you were, or even earlier when you implanted, or even earlier than that, when you were conceived. We trust the steam engine, the vehicle, and your sensory responses. And whenever you're ready, just let us know what you're noticing.
Well, what I noticed when you mentioned I was a twin and that one of us wasn't recognized, all of that was true. But in that noticing, I felt a real sadness. And I think, well, it felt like just before birth.
And did you say I felt a real sadness? Is that what you said? Yes.
Yeah, that's when you mentioned that, that was my immediate feeling was of just sadness, really.
Mm-hmm.
And it was to do with my twin.
Uh-huh. Well, we know from your reporting that it took approximately an hour, is that correct, before your twin emerged? Yeah. So when you emerged, you emerged alone, and no one actually
I did, and they didn't know. No, that's true.
Yeah, they didn't know that your twin was there until she emerged. Yeah. So with your permission, if this feels right for you, let's go to that moment. Did you say immediately before birth?
I think so. I think that was where I was.
And the sadness at that moment. And how does that sadness actually feel in your body, Susan?
Well, it's not so strong now, but when it was there, it was in my heart, and it just felt big.
A big feeling in your heart, which is somewhat less now. But at the first moment, it was a big feeling in your heart.
But it also felt that that I couldn't do anything about it.
Okay,
so there was a helplessness there. Okay,
a helpless, big sadness in your heart. Okay, thank you. So recognizing and being present to this memory of a helpless, big sadness in your heart, I'd like you to see if within your consciousness, you can identify an aspect of yourself that I call the witness, and that's the capacity to see clearly. It is an evolved aspect, a prefrontal aspect of brain development, a component of consciousness that is deeply compassionate, but has equanimity alongside that compassion and sees deeply. Do you have such a part of yourself, Susan?
I do. Yes, I do.
Excellent. Excellent. So from that perspective of your witness self, I'd like you to articulate what this about to be born Susan, who you have discovered has a big helpless sadness in her heart. What does she, that part of you, need?
She needs to be reassured, because actually, as we're talking, I also realize she's frightened. There's a way, it feels like she doesn't want to go from where she is, and she's frightened.
So
she needs to feel safe, actually.
So there's fear, there's helplessness, there's a big sadness in your heart. That is the memory. And the need is for reassurance. And from that witness perspective, that part of your consciousness that we are drawing forth, what form would that reassurance take to meet the needs of this about to be born Susan?
Well, what she really needs is to be held. But because she's not yet born, in that way of just holding her, but she needs to feel that feeling of being held and steadied, really, and reassured. What I can see her is flailing around.
Ah, thank you. So she is flailing around. There's a movement there, an action. Is that correct? That you can see and that can you feel as well, Susan?
I can, yeah.
Could you possibly do that movement at this moment as a reflection of your memory? Just give us a visual of that.
It's hands and legs just flailing around. If I was on my back floating, I'd be waving my hands and legs around.
Yeah, so the way you're demonstrating, the palms are open and outwardly facing, and perhaps the legs are doing the same. Yeah, so that's actually somewhat of a Moro's reflex. It's somewhat of a shock reflex. Does that sound accurate?
That's absolutely accurate, yeah.
And we do know that Susan has a background as a doula. I don't know if you were a midwife, but I think you were very much in that field. She's a nurse, so she knows what the Moro's reflex is, and it's that startle response that troubled babies will display. Well done, Susan. Thank you. Yes?
As we were going along, when I was trying to work out where I was, had I been born or was I still to be born? First of all, I thought actually I had been born, and I had a picture of me in that pose, just lying in a cot somewhere. And then it seemed like I was in that place before being born, but in that same state. I just wanted to include that here.
That's excellent. That's important, because you're suggesting that Moro's reflex, that movement response, which is shock, it's a shock response, continued, so that the memory may be of actually both those interludes in your history. And remembering it with the movement is important because movement is the language of embryonic intelligence. So now, Susan, I'd like to ask you to find and identify another aspect of your consciousness, and that is mammalian, that is limbic. That is the part of your consciousness that is maternal, the part of your consciousness that responds so thoroughly, so heartfully to your grandson, the part of you that is nurturing and stewarding, that part of our global consciousness that is stewarding, that we all have. Can you find that part of yourself, Susan?
Yeah, yes, I can.
So once again, really applauding you for identifying these aspects of self that are developed within you. I'd like to invite you spontaneously in an emergent, improvisatory, natural way to, through your visualization, through your internal sensory experience, to connect that part of your consciousness, the mammalian, stewarding, nurturing aspect of Susan, to interact with this about to be born Susan, who also became the newborn Susan, who is in startle, who is flailing, looking for something that isn't there that she needs.
In terms of timing, I first went to the born little one, and I've just put my hand on her very quietly and gently. And then I picked her up and held her as I'm doing that, I'm telling her, not verbally so much, but telling her in my touch that I love her and that she's safe. And my touch is calming her down. And then
Beautiful.
With the baby part of me that is about to be born, I put my hand on my belly and I'm talking to her. And I'm just, on some level, it feels like I'm emitting chemical messages to her that actually she's going to be okay and that she's loved and that I look after her now and when she arrives. And that has soothed her.
So would it be accurate to say that the mature crone Susan, the grandmother Susan, is connecting with the part of herself that was abandoned and not reassured that she was safe and that she was loved, and restoring that moment by bringing the present Susan to that past nervous system aspect of you and updating her understanding in her connective tissue. Is that sound accurate?
That's accurate, yes. And it felt necessary to do that in both places.
Yes.
After birth and before birth. It felt that both places that was appropriate and I needed to do that.
Very well done. Very well done. And what do you notice as you tend to these two instances of your biography that have now been updated and made current, the past differentiated from the present? How does that feel in your body?
There's a mixture of things. There's a relief, and there's also that recognition, that sadness of being recognized of where you were and being seen and held in that. And that brings up a lot of emotion.
And what is that emotion that it brings up, Susan?
It's it feels like sadness, and it's the sadness of that you didn't have that, and knowing that, but there's a relief in there. So it's not like the sadness is overwhelming. It's just that that aspect has suddenly been noticed, and it's that really. It's the emotion of being noticed in an appropriate way.
The emotion of being seen. The emotion of being seen. If there was a movement, Susan, that demonstrated that emotion of being seen, what would that movement be? Perhaps you can show us. You don't have to describe it necessarily. Perhaps you could show us.
It feels like there's two movements. It's like the first movement is being held in a really soft but appropriate way, and the next part of that is being able to relax and just be.
Yeah. Beautiful. So being held. In the Tara approach, we have the sites right outside the armpits in which we embrace ourselves. And in that, yes, beautiful. And in that self-embrace, we invite a deep level of relaxation. Yeah. Susan, I wonder if you could promise from within yourself these two parts of you, the one who felt that helplessness and fear and sadness just before birth, and that startle, and who needed reassurance, and then that same Susan right after birth. If you could promise them that you'll remind them that there is a difference between the past and the present, perhaps through the movement of self-embrace. But each time that memory resurfaces, you could meet it with this reassurance. Each time, to reinforce the neuroplasticity that is your birthright. Is that something you could commit to?
I can commit to that. Yeah.
Thank you. And when you're ready, opening your eyes, making contact with the circle of healing that you can see. There's a much greater circle of healing all around you that you can't see, Susan, but thankfully we have a circle that you can see. And taking in that you are seen, and honored, recognized, and noticing how that feels and where you're landing from this journey, this rediscovery journey, and sharing with us where you are in this new space.
It's quite amazing, really, because I definitely feel in a completely different place. I feel much more open, much more able to receive, and happy to be looked at. Yeah, just happy to be here, really.
Mm.
And alongside that, just amazed at that whole process, really, and how it just puts people, me now, back together, really, in such a beautiful way. On some level, so simple, but on another level, so well crafted, because you were a beautiful guide, Stephanie.
Please keep the attention on yourself. Thank you, but I want you really keep the attention on you, Susan. I appreciate that so much.
But it's important to include that because I needed that help to get to where I got to. So yeah, and I just I do feel very different. If I was to have an image of myself, it would be standing tall and smiling out, really. That's, I mean, I'm sitting down here, but that's how I'd be. Proud to be here.
Beautiful. Anything more that you would like to say?
Well, I didn't have a big expectation because my main thing was to be here, if you see what I mean. And so this is huge, actually, in relation to whatever expectation I might have dreamed up. And I'm just very, very, very grateful to all of you.
I understand that so well. Thank you, Susan. So we're going to turn now to reflections, which I'm going to ask you, Susan, to receive, as you are now able to receive more than ever before from the Circle of Healing. And of course, you're welcome to interrupt, to respond, to ask whatever you need. You're in the center. This is for you, to empower you, to empower your beautiful crone's voice in this turning point for humanity and for your grandchildren and your children, especially your grandchildren. So let's begin with Michelle. Your observations, your resources, your response.
Well, I appreciate how lit up you are looking. You, of course, the light was always here, but it's shining out, and we're radiating, being bathed in that radiance now more, and I so appreciate it. I can feel you more, your happiness and happiness to be here, and you know, in reflections beforehand, I had actually thought of the pericardium, you know, the original movement that Stephanie shared with us, and I had thought of other things. At this point, ongoing with your from having gone from that flailing helplessness to being there to hold yourself. I'm feeling moved to share with you as perhaps an ongoing self-care, besides the wonderful embrace of self, perhaps one step further in the joy movement, the self-care version of the 15 flow, joy in everything, you know, wash your heart with laughter. And so for those who aren't familiar with the TAR approach, there's right at the crease where the leg meets the rest of the body, you could place a hand there, and you can do this sitting down as well. And the other hand on the sole of the foot, the same side, sole of the foot, so you could cross your leg, you know, have one hand on that crease, joy and everything, and the other, the sole of the foot, the very grounding place where we meet Mama Earth, receive her joy in our presence here to stand tall and be happy to be here. And receive that, receive yourself in a joyous way, and the ability to move from ground up and express yourself. I'm doing it and invite anyone else who'd like to experiment with that at this moment. But this is just what I'm feeling would be something ongoingly that could be helpful in remembering the no more flailing, but a self-expression, a joyous expression of being here.
Yeah, transitioning from that movement of flailing. So when that flailing impulse arises, you may not act on it when it arises, but you sensorily experience it. Going to these sites is a way of committing to the differentiation between the past and the present and recognizing that difference in your wisdom now. Beautiful.
And this is an antidote for depression, which, you know, may have been associated with this stuck sense that has been with you. So lovely to see your smile.
Thank you.
Does that feel useful for you, Susan?
It does, actually. And there are places where I quite often will put my hands, do you know, without thinking of anything in particular. If I'm sitting after I've done whatever, there'll be places I go to. But it's nice to have it's said in that way, Michelle. Do you see what I mean? As opposed to just me doing that. It's very nice for you to put it out on a plate like that so that I can receive it in that way. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Jen, your giveaway for Susan.
First, I want to say, Susan, from one person who struggles to be seen to another, I deeply bow to your willingness to be in the middle of the circle today. It was very inspiring, and I see you, and I appreciate you. I am, when I think about one thing that I could offer you, I see you as your mammalian self putting a hand on the stomach of the baby you to comfort you. And so I want to invite you as the adult you, when you feel a moment of need, to just put a hand on your chest or stomach and be present to yourself. And know that you are there for you.
I think that's really beautiful and particularly pertinent, because it's what I would always do for everybody else. But what you're doing here is reminding me that I could just simply do that for myself. So thank you.
You're welcome.
And Laurel.
Yes, I would also echo what Michelle and Jen said. Susan, thank you so much for providing this gift of being willing to be witnessed in this way. Yeah, I can resonate with a lot of these similar feelings of not wanting to be seen. So this is huge. And yeah, I think that my thoughts go to the heart and to the gut and then to the back of the sacrum, down at the bottom of the spine. To, I saw this and I heard this place in you of joy and being lit up and standing tall, being grounded. So I see that vision of you as well, standing tall, holding yourself at the base of your spine, standing tall, grounded, feet planted on the earth. So I would invite you to try that as well. And thanks again. This was an amazing process to be witnessed.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Laurel, for your noticing in that. I'm deeply touched, and I'll follow that advice. Thank you.
Yeah, I want to add support for what Laurel said about the sacrum, which is a place of support in the body. And that area right at the base of the spine that Laurel is drawing attention to, the back of this situation, is the back of the pelvis and the place that in the unfolding of embryogenesis reflects implantation, reflects the moment at which one finds their home in the body of the mother. And you did that with your twin. You found your home there. And when you touch that place on your body, the base of the spine, in the middle, as we did yesterday for adrenal tonification, it's the seat of the adrenals energetically. And then on either side of that, you are supporting that implantation that you shared with your twin when you were together in finding your home in the body of your mother. So beautiful suggestion, Laurel, from my perspective. And I do encourage you to include that in the self-care that's being recommended for you, to keep this neuroplasticity ongoing, keep it generating all the options for behavior, and perhaps even letting yourself stand tall. You are a tall woman. I've had the great fortune of actually being in person with Susan, and she is a tall woman, and she stands tall. Nalini.
First of all, just much gratitude to you, Susan, for not only accepting this, but sharing your vulnerability with us and sharing your fears, but actually showing your strength. I think that's what vulnerability is really about. So thank you for that. I have a question, and maybe you don't know, but do you happen to know if at any point in time during your birth story you were breech?
No knowledge of that. No, neither of us, as far as neither of us were. And I can't now re-ask my mum, but I didn't necessarily feel that in that early place.
Okay.
But I'm interested in your question because there's always that possibility. Do you see what I mean? So I'm interested in, behind the question, what your wonder is.
So the reason why I was asking was because when you were describing the place that you were at when you were still in the room and what you as the baby about to be born needed, and you needed to be held, and you were feeling fear of what's going to happen next. For some reason, I imagined almost like a recoiling away from the birth, but yet still wanting to do something because you knew that that was your path. So I imagined a foot coming out first. And with these babies' feet and the baby wanting to be held, and there was a missing element of maybe earth, of support. I just wanted to, and I did in my mind, I put my hands under your feet, your baby's feet of being born. And it was really the sacred site number 5 on the inside of the heel and the ankle that really, for some reason, that was drawing my hands and my fingers. And in my mind, the part of that particular sacred site that I think was coming through me to you as a baby was that fearlessness, right? That it's okay. You are supported. You do have mother, you do have earth. We are here for you. And it's okay to come forth. And I think very much like Jen said, what I felt for you going forward is a hand on your heart and telling your own heart that it's okay, that I forgive you, that I love you. Saying that to your own heart. How does that resonate with you?
I think the last part of what you said resonates because it's, again, a reminder of what I'm so familiar about in terms of helping other people that I haven't in my past self just automatically done for myself. And they're all such simple things, such, very fundamental self-care, really. And as I was listening to you, it didn't feel like I was breach. It didn't feel like I was foot first. That was my feeling, really. But I was still interested in what you said, and I think, except for the position of it, it still applies. Do you see what I mean? So the fact that you were drawn to 5s was perfect. But yeah, I think I don't feel I was breach. But that didn't get in the way of me hearing what you've said and applying it to me as I was, really. So thank you. And thank you for deeply connecting in that way.
Thank you for allowing it.
I really want to pay tribute to you, Susan, in the way that you responded to Nalini. I want to honor your agency in that, because as we experience being in a circle of healing and witnessing, there's a lot of resonance generally that occurs. And out of that resonance, people can have strong feelings or a sense of what happened for you, which may be a reflection of many other factors. So the capacity to sort, that was what I started with in the pericardium self-care of the base of the ribs and the opposite elbow. That is the sorting stimulation that is present in our connective tissue to sort what is coming in and extract from that the jewels, the essence, the pertinent value. This is so needed at this time. We are inundated with huge amounts of information, opinions, insights, visuals, and our health depends on our capacity to sort that out, to make discriminating, discerning choices about what we receive. And you just demonstrated the capacity to do that with grace. You're a model of that much needed capacity, Susan. So I want to bring yes, Michelle.
I had one more thought, and it was something
Yeah.
I thought of in the last day or two, reflecting as also a twin who was breech, actually, and that's a whole different story. But and having been born first, I wonder, and there was such a long period of time between your birth and your twins, and even before your birth and after, you felt that fear and you were flailing and you were in shock. But I wondered about a sense of waiting for her, even if no one else knew she was there. You did. You came from the same. You'd been together for 9 months, or however many months it was. So I had a sense of, are you waiting for her, or is there a sense of waiting in you that may have started then, that may just be sort of a vague sense of waiting that could still be a memory that's in you? It's just something that came up. But that sense that with the breechness, there, even though the physical position was not there, there is that sense of somehow waiting, almost like you were saying, waiting. You were not ready to come out. You didn't feel safe to come out, and there can be that sense sometimes with breechness, not wanting to come out, or maybe wanting to stay where we were, in this wonderful where we came from before we were physical, even a divine homesickness that. And I don't know if that was at all at play with you. But I had that sense of waiting when Nalini mentioned the breach. Just observation that came up for me. It may not resonate with you though. I'd be interested to know what you.
Well, interestingly enough, waiting is something that I can recognize. And so I can be infinitely patient, and I can actually wait too long sometimes. So waiting definitely resonates. And as you were speaking, I think that in my knowing, the reason I didn't want to be born was I knew then that they didn't know about her. In my baby knowing, I knew they didn't know. My mum didn't know. And I think that was why I was worried or frightened or any of that really. And waiting, there is a waiting. There definitely waiting resonates. So thank you for just highlighting that. I really appreciate that, Michelle. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Yesterday, I read a poem, Who Are You?, which speaks to this intimate remembering that we're all capable of. And once we remember, and we remember our triumph because we're here, we remember that triumph. And because we know that triumph, because we know, we do not wait. It's very much a message for this time that I feel strongly. And Roe v. Wade threats increase this awareness that because we know, we do not wait. We're not waiting for someone else to do something. We are doing it. We are being it. And you have the agency and the power and the wisdom to stand tall and be all that you are. Susan Roberts in Wales. Thank you. Thank you to everyone. The purpose of this in the context of regenerative health for a climate changing world is to demonstrate the universal power and efficiency of putting the individual in the center, of using the hands, we are the five-fingered ones, of community healing. So the wisdom that we have, that we draw forth in civilized, compassionate service to one another, is possible in every community. And someone could be in the center of the circle with fibromyalgia, with inflammation, with chronic headaches, with panic responses, with fear about what will happen to their family, with concern over a troubled youth. And such a circle would resonate with worthy, effective healing. This is a redefinition of healthcare that I dare to put forth. There will be a brief, because the spectrum is much longer, but a 4-week introduction to the regenerative health paradigm that will come through climate change and consciousness, the TAR approach for the resolution of shock and trauma. Michelle will post these websites and announcements in the chat. All of this is also available on the Ubiquity Humanity Rising sites, as is the information for the other presenters that have preceded us. I want to express deep gratitude, foremost to Susan, who showed up big time and is standing tall, and to the circle of civilized, compassionate healthcare providers from the grassroots. And thank you, Michelle, again, for all your coordination. I want to speak to what lies ahead and really get your ballast in place for tomorrow, because the Latinas are coming for this moment in time. Tomorrow, Cinco de Mayo, facilitated with Dr. Anita Sanchez, author of The Four Sacred Gifts, with Jenny Estrada, Sister Weeping Willow, founder of the Wise Latina Network, and Yo También Healing. Lorraine Martinez Cook, founder of Yo También's Healing Movement, and Cynthia Ruiz, recipient of the 7 Arrows Award. These women are on fire about the situation. So tomorrow, be ready for the truth about Cinco de Mayo. Cinco de Mayo, which has been distorted in the Western world, is about the triumph of a small band of Mexican warriors against the colonizing French forces of Napoleon. It's the miracle story of how a small band of committed individuals, focused and full with faith and alignment, can meet what appears to be the puffed up, bigger, well-dressed force of an invading army of extraction. That's what we want to remember for Cinco de Mayo. And then the final day in this summit is devoted, as it should be, to the children of the future. I will speak to my experience working with neurodiverse children and families who The children are the ones who have educated me about what health empowerment really means. And we will have Ibu Robin Lim, Dr. Allison Davis, and Dr. Peter. For some reason, that man's name has suddenly eluded me. The one gentleman, I think it's Whitehouse, Dr. Peter Whitehouse.
Whitehouse.
Whitehouse, okay. Dr. Peter Whitehouse will also be part. He's a fortunate man to be part of that panel. And I'd like
put in the link. I just showed briefly an announcement for a Regenerative Health 4-week course, 4-session course coming up. If you sign up on the cccearth.org website or tara-approach.org, you will get the announcement for when that is ready if you are interested in registering. And
yeah, we haven't quite posted it yet, but it will be there soon.
Yes, so you'll get the announcement if you sign up on the mailing list. And I also put a link for a birthday fundraiser honoring Stephanie Mine's 78th birthday coming up this month, the month of the mother. Isn't that something? And as she's working on 2 more books to bring forward and seeking funds to help with that, any donation to help support this effort and the ongoing teaching of regenerative health and sharing in forums like this would be helpful. So that it's the Tiny Earl link. It doesn't have a heading you can recognize, but I just put that in the chat as well.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you so much. And I will now turn this over to Jim Garrison, express my gratitude to him. I'm happy to do that over and over again for creating a platform that allows the delivery of the regenerative health paradigm. Jim.
Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you, Susan. It's not easy to be the center of a circle in private, let alone on a global broadcast. So I really want to acknowledge you, Susan, for your integrity and the authenticity with which you showed up and the circle of women around you. I just want to acknowledge that too. What was striking me, Stephanie, is what we've witnessed today is probably the most ancient form of healing that goes back to deep antiquity, where people were held in a circle of compassion and in prayer that healing might occur. And we know from all kinds of scientific studies that the power of prayer, the power of collective intention around a receptive heart, like we saw today with Susan, has an efficacy that has yet to be explained by modern science. But that doesn't make it any less true. So what you've demonstrated today, all of you, has been a very powerful illumination in not only the most ancient of healing practices, but the most relevant under current world conditions. And so I just want to acknowledge it.
This actually has been proven by science. There have been research, clinical trials, I've participated in them, that demonstrate the efficacy of such an approach. The fact is that it's not prioritized. It's not, it fades in the light of the, smoke and the jazzy visuals that dominate. And so this undercurrent is going to rise up, is rising up now.
Yeah. So thank you. Thank you all. That brings us to a close today, everyone. You're welcome to our after session chat group. You'll see that Stan has put the chat link in the chat box. And we'll see you all tomorrow for day 4 on Cinco de Mayo of regenerative health in our time. Bye for now. Thank you all so much.